I now call this meeting to order for the Elyria Board of Education for Wednesday, October the 6th, 2021. Would you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
We'll do roll call.
We'll do roll call right now. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. I jumped the gun a little bit. So now at this time, we'll have the treasurer to give us the roll call, please. Thank you.
Ms. Karstafen?
Here.
Mr. Bax?
Here.
Mr. Alec? Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye. Here.
And Mrs. Seguin?
Here.
Thank you. I will follow with introductions. Let me just move this aside for a moment. Just to follow up, to my far right, we have Board Member Elaine Seguin. Seated next to her, to my immediate right, we have Board Member and Vice President, Mr. Jim Bax. Absent tonight is Board Member Greg Ellick, but seated next to me is Board Member Mike Gebhardt. Absent tonight is Superintendent Ann Sloss, but all the way to the far left is our Treasurer, Joy Clickinger. Thank you. Moving on to visitors' comments. Tonight we have one visitor signed in, and it is Andrew Smith of 41835 Adalbert Street. And he's here to speak about mandates in language. Is that okay? Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
So I came in, is the mic on?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Got it?
Yeah.
Cool. So I came in at the last board meeting to talk about the mask mandates that currently exist for children I found out under the age of 11 in the Elyria School District. That is how the mandate works, correct? I had talked about the use or what masks do to reduce children's overall emotional intelligence and the ability to communicate with their friends in the classroom. And that hasn't changed, but the situation has. We're currently at a state right now where the FBI is getting involved to defend school boards against violence. Personally, I detest violence. I think we already have a nation built upon the most violent individuals possible. I've personally organized on behalf of Julian Assange. I don't know if you know who that is. Founder and publisher of WikiLeaks, first ever publisher prosecuted by the United States of America for revealing factual and accurate information about the world that we live in, about the violent government that we have. A few weeks ago, in the Sunday headline just before school started, the Chronicle Telegram ran a piece outlining all of the violence that has happened across the country in regards to masks and mandates. And I detest violence. It's something that I think is detrimental to any cause. So I just want to make that perfectly clear, that I believe that all of you guys are here to make the best decisions that you feel is necessary for children. But I graduated from Elyria High in 2009. One of the things that they taught me, there was a big piece on it, world history, US history. It was about World War II. And a big portion of that was about how, not just why, but how Nazis came to power. And it may seem weird to be talking to a bunch of school board members about something as simple as the rise of totalitarianism in Europe in 1940. But it actually started in the 30s and even before that with social movements that were rejected, pushed away, that were honestly deplorable, horrible, and rejected human life. There was a documentary made by a Hungarian filmmaker who had survived the Holocaust. And one of the questions that's posed in that documentary to him is, or that he speculates on is, how is it that we didn't do something? We didn't turn and run, we didn't hide. Well, things didn't happen all at once. Things happened very slowly. So each time a new law came out or a new restriction, we said, well, it's just another thing. and it will blow over. Then we had yellow stars on our chests. Right now, I had to file a piece of paper for the right to have my kid breathe oxygen unrestricted in a classroom. I had to file a piece of paper for my kid to be able to have her friends see her smile. I receive emails regularly from the communications director, Amy Higgins, about potential COVID cases in my kids' schools. Wonderful, awesome. Hidden in there is language, right? In the second paragraph included in there, it talks about, you know, if your kids wear masks or are vaccinated, they're not going to have to be quarantined, and that there's this private organization that our government has partnered with that's now responsible for determining if your kid has to go home or not. That's a tool that you guys can use. You could say that there was a COVID positive child in my kid's classroom, they don't wear a mask and they have to go home. That is a weapon you can wield against me and against my family for making this stance that we have today. But I want to read to you the 10 steps of genocide recognized by the United Nations. Classification, people are divided into us and them. Symbolism, people are forced to identify themselves. 3, discrimination, people begin to face systemic discrimination. 4, dehumanization, people are equated with animals, vermin, or diseases. 5, organization, the government creates special groups, police or military, to enforce the policies. Polarization, the government broadcasts propaganda to turn a populace against the particular group. 7, preparation, official action to remove or relocate people begins. 8, persecution, the beginning of murders, theft of property, or trial massacres. 9, extermination, wholesale extermination of a group. It is extermination, not murder, because the people are not considered human anymore. 10, denial. The government denies that it has committed any crime or done anything wrong. These are the things you guys taught me in school. I learned those 10 steps toward genocide in the Elyria School District, right? And I don't know how close or far away you think we are, but when I receive an email from Amy Higgins saying that there is now a private organization responsible for tracking students in our school that has no accountability to any government entity whatsoever and operates in a for-profit manner, that gives that corporation the ability to act in any manner that it so chooses because it has a contract.
Excuse me, your
thank
time's
you.
up.
So I'll just end with this. I've been told as an organizer for over 5 years now that it's better to catch bees with honey than with vinegar. Right? I think that's a common thing among anyone that's dealing with a constituent or what have you. I don't have much honey left, but I am also not a violent individual, and I will not use vinegar. I will not use spray paint either. I will not deface public property in a manner that it cannot be reconciled from. But what I will do is I will work with my children to have them distribute literature to their classmates about what is going on right now. Because when I receive an email saying that a mask and a vaccination prevents the spread of coronavirus, that's 100% incorrect. You can do any type of Google search and realize that right now vaccines, the conversation isn't even about preventing. It's about, yeah, you'll catch it, but you won't have as bad symptoms.
Okay, thank
right?
you, Mr. Smith.
And just to clarify, children that receive the second dose of vaccination have a 1 in 7,000 chance of developing what's called myocarditis, which is heart inflammation and neurological damage that is completely irreversible. We are facing a point right now where our children are becoming experiments based on propaganda put forth for the profit of corporations and pharmaceutical companies. And I plan on having this stop before it reaches that point, before there is a mandate or any more language that talks about vaccines as the solution to making sure your kid doesn't get put into quarantine and your family's allowed to leave the house. Because right now we're at about step 5
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you.
We're at about step 5 or 6, and by the time we get to step 8 or 9, it's going to be really bad in this country. And people like you in positions of authority have the power to change that simply by the use of words and the ability to educate parents through the platforms that you all have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to E, board member discussion items. Are there any board member discussion items for number one? If not, number two is the amendment to exchange agreements. Have all of our board members had the opportunity to read the amendment?
Yes.
You have? Okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the motion.
Moved by Mr. Mike Gephardt. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Elaine Seguin. Are there any questions? No questions? Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mrs. Seguin?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries on the amendment. Moving on to F, which is the meeting minutes. Hopefully, everyone has had the opportunity to read over the minutes. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the Board of Education record of proceedings for the meeting of September 15, 2021, as detailed in enclosure F1. May I please have a motion?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Gephardt. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Seguin. Are there any questions?
None.
No questions? Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll, please?
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mrs. Seguin?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on to treasurer action items.
Thank you, Madam President. My
Thank
first
you.
item is to approve the attached list of purchase orders. And item number 2 is to acknowledge, express appreciation, and accept the gifts that are noted below. And let me read through those. From Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, $100 to the Science Olympiad. From Walmart, 8 store pallets of school supplies valued at $3,000. From the East Broad Street Church of Christ, school supplies valued at $150. And from Ridge Tool Company, a donation of school supplies and book bags valued at $1,500. And those are my items this evening.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. May I please have a motion to approve the items recommended by the Treasurer as presented?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Bax. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gephardt. Are there any questions on the donations tonight? No question. Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mrs. Seguin?
Aye.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on, I believe we're moving down, is there a treasurer report?
No.
Moving on to J, OFCC, OSFC, and facilities constructions.
Okay, this evening we have 2 addendums. The first one is addendum number 3 to the Westwood renovation, and that is for the new fire suppression system. And the second item is addendum number 4 to the Crestwood renovation, and it also is the new fire suppression system.
Okay. Thank you. May I please have a motion to approve the items recommended by, the items from the OFCC?
Move to approve.
Moved to approve by Mr. Bax. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Seguin. Are there any questions?
Yeah. As a board, we have never talked about this. I talked about this with Mr. Bax once, but as a board, we have never talked about this fire suppression. I think we should table this and so we can talk about it. I mean, I don't know where this money's coming from. I don't know anything about it, so.
I can tell you that the money for this will come from the ESSER funds, first off, and secondly, it is a recommendation from the fire chief, or fire inspector.
I still think it needs to be talked about, so. But there's a second, the motion, so.
You're not comfortable moving forward?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well,
But
we
there
want
is a
you-
motion on the floor, so. And a second.
I didn't look at the updated summary from Greg's Esser that he just sent out a couple days ago. I don't know, was this in that?
Mhm.
So the
Yes.
Esser money that's been talked about with that, okay.
It was in Greg's?
Yes.
From Friday, yes.
Yeah.
It was there.
Well,
Did you not have the opportunity to look at
I
the
did not look at Greg.
update Friday? Okay. It was
Yeah, if
there.
we want to discuss, I sat in on the initial discussions with the architects, Mr. Rigdo, the fire chief, the township fire chief, and we discussed the aspects of fire suppression. And it appears that while actually under the regulations, we could have, where a building is being repurposed or being somewhat remodeled for the use, that there, because of the age of the building and when it was built, theoretically, it could be grandfathered, meaning that no fire suppression was ever supplied to the building, and that under that regulation, no fire suppression is required. As we went on with the discussion, it also was obvious that we have built 5 new buildings in this district, including 6, including the high school, and all those buildings have fire suppression included in those buildings. And so it came down as a matter of judgment that it would be proper to include fire suppression in a remodeled building, a heavily remodeled building as Crestwood, and what we're doing at the Westwood, currently at the Westwood building, that how do you justify, I guess you justify fire suppression in the new buildings because it's required by code. But in these remodels, there was some question about the remodeling that we're calling remodeling is so extensive that it almost is a new building. But rather than argue the code, the decision was, well, let's look at this from the standpoint of what really needs to be done for the students. And it was apparent, and it was likely that the investment would be acceptable, or the cost of this would be covered under ESSER. And we wanted to confirm that. And when that was confirmed, that basically made that's where the recommendation has come from.
And
So it is, yeah, it's an additional $1.1 million. So while that's not certainly that we're keeping that in mind because we are we're going to hold to a budget. When we were able to get that expense qualified under our ESSER funds, we decided that we would be remiss if we did not take advantage of it and get the coverage on the buildings. So that's where it came from.
Thank you for that explanation,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bax.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have nothing to add. I mean, we could, that's about as much as I know about it.
Okay. Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mrs. Seguin?
Aye.
Mr. Gebhardt?
I'm going to abstain.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward to K, Superintendent action items.
Okay, I'm filling in for Ann this evening, so I'll read through these and present her action items.
Thank you.
The first item is to approve payment of stipends as listed in the agenda. The second item is to approve the food service management agreement as listed in enclosure K2. The third is to approve the agreement between Elyria Schools and Bowling Green State University for a speech-language pathology internship. Number 4 is to approve the purchase of 3 Ford F-350 trucks from Elyria Ford. And those are the items this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. May I please have, I'm sorry, I'm hearing something. May I please have a motion to approve the superintendent items as presented?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bax. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gephardt. Are there any questions or concern on the motion?
Yeah. Is approval of the supplemental contracts for the sports, is that included in this, right?
No, this is.
That's just the first.
This is before that yet. We haven't gotten to that.
Okay.
Okay. Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mrs. Segwin?
Aye.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Okay, moving back to your other hat as
Okay.
acting.
There are no other
Okay.
items. However, in personnel action
Personnel.
items,
Okay, thank you.
the first item is the unpaid leave for the classified administrator as noted in the agenda. Number 2 is to approve the retirement of the certified staff as listed. Number 3 is to approve the appointment of the certified staff as detailed in the agenda. Number 4 is the approval of the supplemental contracts as listed. Number 5 are the athletic supplemental contracts as listed, including district employees, classified employees, and non-district employees. Number 6 is the resignation of the classified staff as detailed. 7 is the appointment of classified staff as detailed in the agenda. And 8 is to approve the appointment of the SROs as detailed. And those are the items brought to you from the superintendent.
Thank you. May I please have a motion to approve the items recommended by the superintendent tonight?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gephardt. May I please have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Segwin. Are there any questions regarding those items?
Now I have a question,
Okay, go right ahead.
and maybe you could answer this. I see Matt Sawerka, he's doing the 8th grade girls basketball and the 7th grade boys. Is that not overlap?
They tend to be different seasons at the middle school because there's only one gym. So I know back in the day when I was in middle school level, the boys' season started first. Once it concluded, then it went into the girls'
Okay.
basketball season.
And the other question I had on the SROs, these are just police officers. We're not having an SRO in the building permanently. As one person, I mean, if that makes sense. These are just two officers that are being added to the list.
Well, they would be added to the list, I assume, to fill out the rotation, like Elyria High School has had a SRO
Yeah.
6 hours a day. They work their day off, so we have a different officer each day of the week.
Okay, so, yeah, they're just the other officers being added that weren't on there before. Okay, that's good.
You're going to rotate between Eastern Heights
Yep.
and Wildwood, yes.
Oh, they are? Okay.
All righty. Madam Treasurer?
Mr. Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mrs. Segwin?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. Moving on, is there a superintendent's report this evening?
No.
No superintendent's report. Board of Education, Number 1, Board of Education's report, and number 2 is Board Policies and Regulations, first reading. There are several here. Hopefully, you've had the opportunity to read over all of the board policies for the first reading. Mr. Bax, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, there's a total of 25. You can see them here, they're quite, it's all over. I mean, it touches a variety of things. The vast majority of it is, well, all of it, for that matter, is either a revision, updates that you see year to year, or in some cases it is revision of wording, calling it more like clarification. In some cases, they remove 10-day limits, for example, and then they'll substitute language that offers some flexibility into the how you, rather than just say 10 days, they might make it a time limit that say gives you a period of time from an event, which gives the administrator some flexibility. But there were no total rewrites of any of these.
Okay, all righty. May I please have a motion to approve the Board of Education items as presented, please?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Seguin. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Gephardt. Are there any questions? No questions. Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Seguin,
Aye.
Mr. Gebhardt,
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Motion carries. No executive session for this evening. Is there anything else to come before this board tonight?
I move we close the meeting.
I will entertain the motion to close the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gephardt. By Mr. Bax. Motion by Mr. Gephardt.
Mr.
Madam
Gebhardt?
Aye.
Mr. Bax?
Yes.
Mrs. Seguin?
Aye.
And Ms. Karstafen?
Aye, thank you. Consider yourself adjourned.